A government agent is sent into a harsh and rural environment controlled by an unknown enemy faction, solo entry being crucial for the mission's success. The lone hero with his deep dark past infiltrates the enemy faction and meets people already active on the inside, aiding him on his journey. Some of the people he meets have a secret agenda or even know of his troubled past. During the mission, he meets fearsome foes that each stand out and make for an extremely iconic boss fight. Our hero must face his past as well as make decisions for the future to not only save the world, but himself and the people he cares for as well. I've just roughly and maybe sloppily described the basic premise of Resident Evil 4, widely considered the best Resident Evil game in the franchise, though not by everyone. I know hardcore fans prefer classics. If you know me personally or have seen some of my videos, you might know I really like Resident Evil 4, and it's by far my favorite game in the franchise. The game just has something extra compared to the others. Maybe it's the iconic enemies whose presence are felt throughout each of the main areas. Maybe it's Leon's process from goofy "it's my first day" cop to bona fide action movie star. Maybe it's the game's location, because you know, it matters. Or maybe, just maybe, just hear me out, it's because Resident Evil 4 is based and built like a fucking Metal Gear Solid game.
Metal Gear.
Huh? Metal Gear? It's like one of my Japanese animes.
Excellent, Snake. Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
For the people who know and maybe played both games, might notice that the weird intro I wrote for the video could easily fit both Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil 4. Let's take Metal Gear Solid for reference, but the text could fit for any of the first 3 Metal Gear Solid games. I'm going to try and separate that small intro into 4 segments that make sense in my head, and in the end you can make your own conclusion if I should be put in a mental hospital or if I'm onto something. Okay, bear with me on this, and please feel free to correct me or destroy me in the comments. Both games follow a government agent en route to a rural location for a top secret mission none can or should know about. Both our main protagonists have contact with their team via a codec and have frequent conversations with them, some more frequent than others.
Snake, it's me again.
Snake, this is McDonald Miller.
Snake, I unlocked the cargo door for you. Snake, can you hear me?
You said you'd stay put and be a good girl.
Though their missions aren't that similar, Leon is sent in to save the kidnapped daughter of the president and soon finds out that the world is at stake due to a secret terrorist threat that you uncover during your initial mission. Snake, on the other hand, gets sent in to rescue 2 hostages and soon finds out that the whole world is at stake due to a secret terrorist threat that you uncover. Oh, I might be stretching things though. The Los Illuminados cult isn't exactly a terrorist organization, though Leon sure thinks so.
This is no ritual, it's terrorism.
Isn't that a popular word these days?
And they're not exactly going for the same thing. The enemy faction of Metal Gear Solid, or to a simpler extent, Liquid Snake's end goal is a bit more complicated, as Liquid just wants the world to be in a perpetual state of war, so that we need soldiers like him and Snake once again. The Los Illuminados, or just Osmond Saddler, wants to convert the whole world to his religion. The original and the remake version differ quite a bit. Osmond Saddler was a bit of a more sane person in the original game and was fully in it for the money and power. Remake Saddler is a religious nutjob and more of a puppet to the Plaga, and really just wants to convert the world as a unified hive mind. As for the locations, rural Spain and an island in Alaska, this is pretty loose on the similarities and makes me reach a bit too much. The only similarity I can conjure up is the final Iceland segment of Resident Evil 4 is also an island, and it's pretty industrial. They're both pretty uncommon locations in video games, and both our heroes must infiltrate the area. I'm using the term infiltrate pretty loosely here because Leon is as stealthy as a washing machine filled with bricks.
Leon, what are you doing?
Don't even think about trying this yourself.
Speaking of our protagonists, our goobers, let's have a look at Leon S. Kennedy and Solid Snake. Both of them are government agents with a traumatic past, but are both pretty cocky about everything.
You've got a great butt.
I knew you'd be fine if you landed on your butt.
Leon has his experience in Raccoon City and Operation Javier to add to his trauma, and Solid Snake has Outer Heaven and Zanzibar. Both games play with the idea that our characters have a history, and the games use that history to drive the current story and events, but more on that later. Both Leon and Snake are extremely skilled and easily tackle everything that's thrown at them. Spoilers for Metal Gear Solid, but why are you even watching this far into the video if you don't want to get spoiled by that game? But both characters even carry an injected virus with them. Leon carries the Plaga with him through the game, injected at the start by the village Big Cheese. Snake carries Fox Dye, a virus that kills and targets specific people based on DNA, that was injected into him before the start of the game during the mission prep. Snake doesn't personally suffer from this virus throughout the game as much as Leon does, but it does impact the entire game's events, as does the Las Plagas parasite injected into Leon and Ashley. Both Snake and Leon learn and grow from their experiences, primarily because of the people they meet. Which brings me to my next point. Pretty early on, both our heroes meet up with other people already behind enemy lines. Leon quickly meets with Louis Serra, a suave smoker who seems to know more than he leads on to. He helps Leon on multiple occasions throughout the game, showing the correct way forward or aiding in halting the Plaga infection. Louis shows Leon that you can't judge a book by its cover. As soon as Leon learns of Louis's past, he's quick to judge and regrets saving him in the first place.
It seems he used to be a researcher for Umbrella.
Umbrella? I should have left him in that bag to rot.
Throughout the game, Louis aids Leon and Ashley to the extent of actually saving their life. He even rubs off on Leon a bit.
What now? Hope you like thrill rides.
You like thrill rides? You're gonna love this.
And shows Leon the good in people after his experiences and betrayals of good faith in Raccoon City. Counterpoint to Louis, we can fit Hal Emmerich or Otacon for Solid Snake, a pant-pissing weeaboo who designed the titular mech and aids Snake throughout the game with particularly anything, from busting out of a prison cell to saving the man's life, not unlike Louis Serra.
Look out, Snake! The guys who stole my stealth prototypes are in there with you!
Otacon asks Snake on multiple occasions the famous "Do you think love can bloom even on the battlefield" line. Snake, being the broody, edgy loner he is, doesn't have any love interests but slowly warms up to Meryl. Otacon's eventual loss and heartbreak force Snake to change his view on love in war, which is a prominent theme in all of the Metal Gear Solid games. Leon meets more familiar faces this far removed from America and eventually stumbles upon Ada Wong, the Raccoon City double agent previously presumed dead. Ada helps Leon out at a crucial life or death moment and once again does everything with a secret agenda, as well as serving as the love interest for our protagonist. Snake, on the other hand, quickly finds the Colonel's niece, Meryl, already deep undercover on Shadow Moses. Meryl helps Snake out pretty early in the game and is a pretty fun codec buddy. As soon as Snake gets any feelings for her though, she only gets used as bait and leverage throughout the rest of the story. Not really similar to Ada, but like I said, I'm stretching. They are both used as bait by the main antagonist during the final of both games though. Something to think about. Where the big similarities come into play though is where Leon and Snake's past catch up to them, where they both have to face it or die. Throughout the game, Snake is visited by a ghostly ninja, who you will eventually have to fight while saving Otacon. Grey Fox is Snake's past comrade in the original Metal Gear and enemy in Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. The presumed dead Frank Yeager is put into an exoskeleton and is back to haunt Snake during the Shadow Moses incident. This fight is really great and forces you to switch up what you know about the game from a gameplay perspective. Grey Fox doesn't like Snake using guns, which are useless against him. As he states,
"Only a fool trusts his life to a
sounds familiar? Eventually Snake overcomes his past when Grey Fox helps Snake during the fight with the Metal Gear. Frank sacrifices himself so that Snake can destroy Rex. His last words support and change Solid Snake's perspective compared to Liquid's worldview. As for RE4, Leon surprisingly faces his old mentor Krauser, who, gets this, was presumed dead.
I died in a crash 2 years ago. Is that what they told you?
Krauser was presumed dead after Operation Javier in South America, roughly 2 years before the game events. What happened during the operation remains rather vague, even when we have a mini rail shooter, which after RE4R doesn't really add up anymore. Krauser, turns out, kidnapped the president's daughter for the cult in exchange for power. Leon's former mentor seems hell-bent on standing in your way and wants nothing more but a soldier's death at the hand of our rookie. If there couldn't be any more similarities, Krauser doesn't really like you fighting with guns. Unlike Grey Fox, guns do hurt him, but your knife is the main tool you'd want to use here. For one battle in the remake, you don't even have a choice. Upon defeating the best boss in the game, Leon finally gets to put his past to rest, symbolized by Krauser finally calling Leon by his name.
I dreamed well. Leon.
Both our main protagonists face their past in the forms of former friends and mentors. I used Grey Fox for this example because you actually find him, but honestly Krauser could be a combination of Miller and Grey Fox, with Miller being Solid Snake's actual mentor. With all these unique and iconic characters, both games' rogue gallery are really what first tipped me off to the game's similarities. The Metal Gear Solid series is pretty well known for its impressive collection of weird iconic foes, from a Romanian terrorist with a vampire-like ability named Vamp, and the fearsome gunslinger Revolver Ocelot. The franchise has little duds when it comes to memorable bad guys. Resident Evil has an impressive collection of baddies themselves, but never really gives them as much detail and character as Resident Evil 4 and really the newer Resident Evil 7 and Village does. As you sneak your way through Shadow Moses Island, Snake will face the deadly Foxhound units. Revolver Ocelot, Psycho Mantis, Liquid Snake, Vulcan Raven, Sniper Wolf and Decoy Octopus. All except for Decoy have a unique boss fight at a moment, which all use unique game mechanics. For a game from 1998, its boss fights are still some of the industry's best. The presence of the entire Foxhound unit is felt throughout the game, and facing them in battle all feel like a concrete moment, a test of skill and a conclusion to a segment. I don't quite know what it is, but the Metal Gear franchise gives all its villains a certain level of quirks and uniqueness that makes them memorable. From character design to backstory and boss fight mechanics, for me these are all key elements to make an encounter stick. Resident Evil has a lot of villains and baddies, though not all of them really stick. Most of them are one-offs, as are the bad guys from Metal Gear Solid, so that's not really a point of critique, but comparing Resident Evil 2's villain roster to Metal Gear Solid 1, both games released in the same year, there's a staggering difference. I know these are different developers, but still. Though when Resident Evil 4 came around, the game used a cast of bad guys that are introduced to you at the start of their segment of the game. You'll know the characters exist and you know they'll stand in your way, much like the Foxhound unit in Metal Gear Solid 1. The village segment introduces you to Torres Mendez. This giant priest looms over the segment with his deranged congregation of crazed villagers. Much like Metal Gear Solid's villains, he's got a very unique look and character. He's very calm, collected, and his boss battle is a stark contrast from that. Dealing with his mutated form inside of a burning barn signifies the ending of the village segment and introduces the next castle part of the game shortly after this. Here the next bad guy in line is introduced rather quickly in the form of a small short-tempered creep named Ramon Salazar. In the original game, this little castellan hijacks your comms and taunts you throughout the segment.
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off?
The entire game sports a cast of baddies that you'll each have to face, some with more character and build-up than others, but all have some interesting lore, backstory, and a reason for the battle to take place. In MGS1 it's done in shorter bursts as there are more villains you'll have to face before you see the end credits, but every encounter is clear and the game paces itself to the bad guy you're facing at the time. For example, the moment you face Sniper Wolf for the first time, you're tasked with backtracking to one of the first areas in the game to find a sniper rifle to combat her. Or with Psycho Mantis, shortly before the encounter, the music starts playing a spooky hymn, and the actual encounter plays with your TV and setting. This use of narrative and gameplay concerning bad guys and boss battles always makes me think of Metal Gear Solid, and I soon discovered that most of my favorite games use this technique. Next to Resident Evil 4, Village does this as well. Village being a spin on the RE4 formula, but in the newer iterations of the franchise. Each segment of the game is dominated by a certain baddie. Lady D for the castle, Donna for the haunted house, Moreau for the reservoir and Heisenberg for the factory. This formula is such a great way to drive the player to finish a game segment. It might not work in every environment, but it always works for me. Most recently, Alan Wake 2 does this also. Each of Saga's overlap segments are guarded by a Taken, Agent Nightingale for the Cauldron Lake overlap, Mulligan and Thornton for the Coffee World overlap, and Cynthia Weaver for the overlap at Valhalla Nursing Home. I'm getting sidetracked here, but my point being, Resident Evil 4 does the same thing with its bad guys and how you interact and defeat them as the Metal Gear Solid franchise does, and it's absolutely brilliant. When all these bad guys are beaten, when the mission is completed and the game is over, what do our characters take away from the experience? So when the dust settles and the mission is finished, what do Leon and Snake take away from the experience? How do they send the player off to the end credits? During the game, Snake is challenged with different perspectives and opinions compared to his. Snake sees the world as a grim battlefield and sees himself as a tool, a soldier bred for war with nothing more. Naomi often chastises Snake on his views of war and death, and she seems to feel herself superior to him.
I don't want to see any woman die right in front of me.
Oh, really? Since when did anybody's death bother you so much?
Snake's past made him this way. His experience in Outer Haven and Zanzibar have twisted his worldview and his perspective of himself. Characters like Meryl and Otacon, people who are still green in Snake's opinion, show him that there's more to life, that it's not all black and white. Both of them show Snake that love is possible to bloom even in the most dire of situations, and that life is worth living. Coincidentally, Liquid's entire scheme would benefit Snake greatly, but due to his newfound allies, Snake has a different perspective on life and chooses to stand against Liquid's worldview. After several revelations that I won't go in depth on as this video will turn into a Pepe Sylvia theory wall, Naomi implores Snake to live life while he has it and enjoy every moment as if it were his last. Snake is a different man now, not hiding behind his given codename anymore. His experience on Shadow Moses made him realize that there's more to just being a soldier. Accepting his love for Meryl, they both drive off into the sunset, off to another adventure. Aww. Leon faces very similar challenges. Bittered by his experience in Raccoon City, Leon has lost trust in the very system his world is built on and the people he used to trust. Still traumatized by all the people he wasn't able to save, taking that responsibility on his back. Now forced to work for the government, undergoing immense training, and again, having been betrayed by his own institution, has made our rookie first-day cop a brooding edgelord full of quips.
So that's your true power? Oh, I'd ask for a refund.
Tasked with finding the kidnapped daughter of the president and soon finding himself in another nightmare akin to Raccoon City, being faced with multiple ghosts from his past in the form of Ada Wong, Krauser and an ex-Umbrella scientist, Leon is challenged. Throughout the game, Luis changes Leon's first impression of him, from casually wanting him dead for working for Umbrella to mourning his loss. Luis showed Leon that a person can change, that their past shouldn't dictate their future. Krauser forces Leon to look to the past, but by putting Krauser to rest, Leon finally closes the book on his traumatic past experiences and makes him look to the future, even when Ada betrays Leon once again, confirming his suspicion that Ada hasn't changed. Leon looks at the experience differently, probably believing that even though Ada hasn't changed yet, she's able to do so eventually, as did Louise. Ashley is for Leon a chance to make things right, a chance to save someone, a bystander if you will, in the most dire of situations.
This time, it has to be different.
It's a small thing, but in the end both Snake and Leon drive off into the sunset with the girl rescued. Both have changed and learned from their experience. Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil 4 being dissimilar isn't a bad thing by far. I hope you don't leave this video with the idea that Resident Evil 4 is a wholly unoriginal game and is a Metal Gear Solid 1 ripoff. For me, these games are both something very special, and the fact that RE4 is so similar to one of the most influential games ever made just shows how good the original Metal Gear Solid really was. So, what's my point here? What was my point here? What was the purpose of this video? Ah, shit man, I don't know, I just noticed these games are pretty similar. Thanks for watching! As I was writing this, I discovered more and more similarities between the two games, and there might be so much more that I missed. If you know of any, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and as always, perhaps I'll see you next time. See ya.